Hi, this is Kirby Harris, and you are listening to the Libertas Press YouTube channel, reporting the truth and common sense opinion. All right, now we're going to go on to the Google News story segment, news for today. We get that from Google News, and the top stories, Japan detects radio signals pointing to possible North Korea missile test. Source says AOL. And let's see, what else do we have here today? Basically, trying to get to, there we go. North Korea terror threat is real, imminent, and unacceptable. Newsmax. Yeah, they kind of hype stuff up a lot. Fury, Trudeau quietly strikes the right notes on North Korea. Opinion, Toronto Sun, we'll get to that. Michael Flynn's role in the Mideast nuclear project could compound legal issues, Washington Post. Related coverage, Michael Flynn's lawyer meets with members of special counsel team raising specter of plea deal. A split from Trump, and that's from ABC News. A split from Trump indicates that Flynn is moving to cooperate with Mueller. Highly cited New York Times article. Odds are Russia owns Trump. Opinion from the New York Times. They're about as skeptical. They're about as believable as I would say Newsmax is sometimes. Even though both can have some truthful stories. Michael Flynn poised to implicate White House officials. AM Joy, MSNBC. Let's see. Senators scramble. I'm going to go ahead and open that. Michael Flynn story. Senators scramble to advance tax bill that increasingly rewards the wealthy. New York Times. Related coverage, reconciliation recommendations of the Senate Committee on Finance, Congressional Budget Office. That is from the Congressional Budget Office. GOP and furious push for tax reform votes. The Hill. Reconciliation recommendations, SFC, Congressional Budget Office. Again, from the Congressional Budget Office. How much does the Trump family have to gain from GOP tax bills? PolitiFact. Will Senate GOP holdouts give in on tax reform? And then there's this story. Not really sure what this is about yet, but I'll read some of it in a few minutes. James O'Keefe tweeted about his confrontation with a Post reporter. Here's what really happened. That's Washington Post. I'm assuming it's related to the story that is highly cited. Well, I mean, that's talked about a lot. This story, woman tried to dupe Washington Post with false claim about Roy Moore, paper says. New York Times. Woman approached the Washington Post with false tale about Moore. She appears to be part of a sting. Let's see. So I'm sure James O'Keefe probably set something up to try to trap them to see if they would publish false stories. Britain's Black Queen. Will Meghan Markle really be the first mixed race royal? Washington Post. Related coverage. Meghan Markle, X-rated photos. Story is fake news. The Gossip Cop did a fact check. Meghan Markle, I'm not sure who the Gossip Cop is. Meghan Markle, who could design the dress for the next royal wedding. Oh, who could design the dress for the next royal wedding? BBC News. What Meghan Markle means for the royal family. That's in the Atlantic. The other American in Prince Harry's family. BBC News. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's first interview together. Tape replay. The Guardian. And finally, last but not least, Russian jet buzzes U.S. Navy spy plane over Black Sea. Russian jet buzzes U.S. military spy aircraft, causing violent turbulence. The first story was from Fox News. That second one, Newsweek. All right. Any of these stories that I don't actually read, I always give a link to these stories from the description down below. Here we go on the what Trudeau says about the Japan detecting North Korea. Let's see, Fury. Trudeau quietly strikes the right notes on North Korea. Basically, it says it's an odd notion. Canada works with Cuba to get them to work with North Korea, to get them in turn to work with the United States on cooling their nuclear ambitions. but it's a worthwhile approach, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau appears to have quietly positioned Canada to play a role in this global fiasco proportionate to what we can reasonably hope to accomplish. I've had surprising conversations with places you wouldn't expect, including places like Cuba, where they actually have decent diplomatic relations with the North Korean regime. No surprise there. Trudeau said on Thursday in Charlottetown, as reported by the Canadian press. Now, we can pass along messages through surprising conduits. There hasn't been a huge amount of discussion around that, but it was a topic of conversation when I met President Raul Castro last year, the PM added. The idea of Canada strategizing diplomacy with Cuba might leave many Canadians a little queasy, just like how the warm tone of Trudeau's statement upon the death of Fidel Castro caught the world off guard. But the truth is that Cuba is an entry point into North Korea. Back in 2013, a North Korean vessel was detained in the Panama Canal on its way home from Cuba. It was carrying sugar, something it normally trades, and also secretly holding Cuban missiles. They've clearly got a lot going on together, and with Cuba being firmly opposed to any country holding any nuclear weapons, excuse me, they'll hopefully sound at least send some of that. They'll hopefully sound at least some of that message with their isolated trading partner. It's not like China, the country with the most economic leverage over the North, has yet delivered meaningful results. How big of a role can Canada play, though, and how successful will we be? Minimal. That's probably the answer to both these questions, and there's nothing wrong with that. Chipping away at the right point still has value. Trudeau's statements also show he's on the right page on two related issues that there's a troubling amount of dissent over. The first is whether or not the threat of Kim Jong-un strikes North America is genuine. Yeah, a lot of people just think, me included, that it's just not legit. That he's not going to be able to strike us in any way, shape, or form. We'd knock it out before it ever got left his airspace. It's just people are just posturing and warmongering. That's my opinion. And Trump's one of the biggest warmongers. Pretends he's kind of not for that stuff, but he really is. I mean, he's like one side of his mouth, he's like, bomb him, kill him. The other side, he's like, we shouldn't interfere. It's like, it's nonsense. Sometimes in the same sentence, it's like they used to say Bill Clinton would say whatever he wanted to. I mean, he'd say one thing to one group and the exact opposite to another group, but never together. Obama kind of did a little of together, but it was still, he fused it out. Not Trump. Well, one sentence says peace and war. So anyway, back to the story. If you look at the flight path, there's potential challenges for intercontinental missiles, ICBMs, from North Korea passing over Canadian territory, Trudeau said Thursday. This is an element that's been downplayed too frequently, and it's refreshing to see no less than a figure than a PM show concern. If Kim Jong-un perfects his ICBMs, that spells trouble for Canada, says the article. And as Lieutenant General Pierre Saint Armand, our rep at NORAD, told parliamentarians in September, the extent of the U.S. policy is not to defend Canada. We need to be our own voice in this matter. And it goes on. And you can read it yourself. The link will be there. On to the thing about related to Roy Moore. James O'Keefe tweeted about his confrontation with the Post reporter. Here's what really happened. The Washington Post on Monday published a report about a woman who falsely claimed Roy Moore sexually assaulted her as a teenager and who appeared to work with Project Veritas, an organization that uses deceptive tactics, says the Washington Post. Washington Post is writing this. Hold on, I got to stop here. The Washington Post is writing a story about itself connected to Project Veritas and James O'Keefe, who some people question the legitimacy of what he does. I mean, he basically goes undercover and commits stings, and then basically uses the video footage and the stings to call out those organizations for hypocrisy and all sorts of stuff. I'm not saying 100% trust Project Veritas or James O'Keefe, but still, it's supposedly the Post paid a woman to say that she had claims against Moore, and this is all interrelated. So the Washington Post is basically reporting on itself. It's really screwy when a supposed news agency who does more opinion than news, even in their stories, basically is so far gone and so big that it becomes embroiled in its own stories and has to defend itself in its own stories. And then to write here in this story, give opinion like it just did. And who appeared to work with Project Veritas, an organization that uses deceptive tactics and secretly recorded conversations in an effort to embarrass its targets. Yes, that's kind of what they do, but the way it's written, it's like, deceptive. They're deceptive. It should say, concealed tactics, something like that if you want to report it even, not as a, if you want to report it even, unbiased. Sorry, that kind of got me wound up there. Shortly after the investigation was published, Project Veritas founder James O'Keefe tweeted a video of what he called his confrontation with one of the authors of the Post investigation, Aaron C. Davis. The video was heavily edited, a tactic for which Project Veritas has drawn criticism. Post filmed the entire encounter, so they have a video themselves. But of course, you got to pay to read the rest. And I'm not interested in paying the Washington Post any money, any news agency at all. If you don't put your stuff on there for free and have ads and stuff like that, then that's your fault. So next, the other story of Michael Flynn's role. Michael Flynn's role in the Mideast nuclear project could compound legal issues. In June 2015, retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn took a little notice trip to Egypt and Israel, paid for by a U.S. company he was advising. The company hoped to build more than 24 nuclear plants in the region in partnership with Russian interests. Flynn's quiet involvement in that project and his failure to disclose his ties to the effort could complicate the legal issues facing President Trump's former national secretary advisor, who has signaled that he may be willing to cooperate with Special Counsel Robert S. Mueller III. Again, a Washington Post story there that I'm not going to pay for. If you want to follow the link and pay for it, that's fine. There's even a video that you could watch. So, and the final story, Russian jet buzzes U.S. Navy spy plane over the Black Sea. There you go. Okay, my browser's free. There we go. Browser was freezing up a little bit. A Russian Su-30 fighter jet buzzed a Navy reconnaissance plane flying in the Black Sea while conducting a routine patrol in international airspace Saturday, an official told Fox News. This is a Fox News story. The Russian jet crossed 50 feet in front of the Navy P-8 in a full afterburner, causing violent turbulence, the official said. The provocation lasted 24 minutes. I mean, that's like, from what I understand from people I've talked to that, fly these fighters, that's like an eternity. Oh my goodness. Must have been crazy for the Russians and the U.S. It appears to be the first known incident of this type since June, when an armed Russian fighter jet buzzed a U.S. Air Force reconnaissance aircraft over the Baltic Sea. I don't think I remember that, but I guess they like buzzing our planes. Kind of like, screw you. The Russian Su-27 jet had air-to-air missiles under its wings and approached the U.S. Air Force RC-135 recon jet rapidly, coming within 5 feet of the American craft, officials say. That's really close for two fighters. Once alongside, the Russian jet was provocative in its flight maneuvers and flying erratically, according to another official. Now, I'm wondering if this is like the Russian government, getting their guys to do this, to really mess with us, or if it's just their guys like, let's watch this, haha. They can't do anything. Trump's belongs to our president. No, just kidding. Earlier this month, U.S. fighter jets intercepted Russian nuclear bombers approaching the aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan off the coast of North Korea. So you don't hear a lot about this on the news. I mean, I don't really watch the mainstream news, Fox, CNN, or MSNBC anymore. So I really don't know. Maybe they are reporting this a lot, but I get news filtered into me every day, and and from all sorts of sources, and I really don't see this being reported that much. These interactions. I mean, this looks like we're doing some real provocative stuff here against each other. Multiple U.S. Navy FA-18 jets were dispatched to escort 2 Russian Tu-95 bombers away from the ship currently stationed near North Korea and operating in the Sea of Japan, according to Navy officials. The Russian bombers, capable of executing a nuclear strike, were intercepted merely 80 miles away from the ship, said Navy officials. Lieutenant Commander Nicole Swegman described the incident with the Russian Air Force as safe and professional, according to military.com. Saturday's incident, which CNN was first to report, came just weeks after the Russian Foreign Ministry called the U.S. an occupying force in Syria. There are roughly 2,000 U.S. troops on the ground in Syria, although the Pentagon acknowledges only 500. It's unclear how many will remain following the defeat of ISIS in Raqqa, the terror group's so-called capital. There are approximately 3,000 ISIS fighters left in Iraq and Syria, according to U.S. officials, after reaching a height of nearly 40,000 fighters 2 years ago. I mean, it seems like a lot of this stuff is heating up between us, and yeah, they report it, but they'll be like a blip. As soon as it happens, they'll report it real quick, and then they'll move on to other stories that they deem more important, like Russian scandals and Roy Moore and some of the sex scandals, which, yes, are important, but they make that everything when they should be reporting more of this stuff. All right. So those are the news stories for today, for November 27th, 2017. I'm Kirby Harris, and you are watching the Libertas Press YouTube channel, reporting the truth and common sense opinion. God bless and have a great day.